taking risks. Our greatest fear as human beings is failure. Our primary objectives to get through life is to avoid discomfort as much as possible, and that usually means avoiding failure at any point. And what does that do? That inhibits our attempts to try something new or to try something that could well be successful. Once you realize it's okay to fail, you realize you can progress and develop and get things right. It's really important to not think of creativity as something that you're simply born with. We are human beings. We are problem solvers by intuition. We are designed to take risks and we are designed to solve problems in order to better improve our situations. We are full of deeply complex emotions and desires, and these are all things that mustn't be neglected or discarded. I wanted to talk about this today because I feel as though the older I get and the deeper my understanding becomes of consequences and of the world around me, I felt as though I was beginning to fear challenging that world more and more. You begin to realize the consequences of everything that you do, and it's very easy to overthink all of those things. All these things gather stress and pressure, and that's what makes us fear failure. And I feel as though when you start to get into that mindset, it's really easy to forget the joy of life. And the biggest joy of life is the ability to play. And play is such an important part of what we do as photographers. A really good friend of mine, Don Smith, he was an incredible creative director for many, many years, and now he is a very successful inventor. And he's been a mentor of mine since I was about 21. He put the concept of risk-taking and what it is to be human in such a beautiful way. He said to remind yourself how you would play as a child, or how you would notice other children playing, perhaps at the time that you were a child or now. When children play, they are taking risks physically, they're taking risks emotionally, they're taking risks socially. And all of these things are being done to learn and to test their own limits. At that age, you have very little understanding of the bigger, the wider negative consequences of your actions. In terms of physical risks, they're seeing how high they can climb a tree or how far they can throw something, which are risks that we might not want to take as a grown adult. We're thinking, well, I don't want to climb that tree because if I do, I might fall and then I might break something, which means I won't be able to work. Children take risks emotionally in terms of the relationships they build. They are taking risks socially as well in that regard. You can see how children's behavior develops and changes and adapts when they build those relationships and they've taken those risks with other children. They're constantly learning and developing by testing their own limits. And I really do feel like this is something that we tend to neglect and forget about the older that we get, which is completely understandable. But it does stop us from trying new things. And in this world of photography, we must always be open and able to adapt and change to the ever-evolving landscape that we're working in. Particularly with the development of AI and technology, there is this growing sense in a lot of people to not look towards the future because the future is terrifying and we don't know enough about it yet. So I think a lot of people find comfort in looking towards the past. And there's this kind of false sense of the past was better and it was comforting, and it's not real. It's not reality. The reality is where we are now, and we must look ahead and we must look towards the future. And rather than shying away from new things, maybe figuring out a way to bring it into your world, but in a productive way, in a way that makes sense to you, and a way that enhances or complements your way of working and your way of being creative. And on that note, I think it's very easy to become very cynical. The more you do this job, the easier it is to be cynical about the industry, the people that you work with, the experiences that you have. But it's a mistake. Cynicism reduces everything to one level, and it has nothing to do with reality, because reality is so much more nuanced and complex and richer than all of that. So when you become really deeply cynical, you're missing the beauty of life. And people don't like to be around cynics. Don't get me wrong. I think, myself included, people like a little bit of sarcasm, and I think people also like, in that sense, to feel as though they're not alone. So a little bit of a rant and a moan about work and the jobs and the industries and the struggles can be therapeutic and comforting in itself. It can be a little bit of a laugh, but people want to feel that sense of excitement and innocence and enthusiasm. So if you're bringing negativity into a lot of things, people may laugh initially, but eventually they will just push you aside because people don't want to be around that energy. certainly not in the long term. We all want to maintain some sense of innocence. So again, we're coming back to the idea of play. It's so easy to stop yourself from starting something because it's easier to not put yourself in the firing line to fail. A lot of the time it can feel as though you don't want to do the thing because you're putting yourself on the line of failure. So it's easier not to do the thing because you're not putting yourself out there to fail. And although we're always looking to adapt and improve our situations, we're also looking to avoid discomfort as much as possible. So it's natural that we want to protect ourselves. But the greatest ideas, the greatest inventions are not born out of people standing still. They are born out of people realizing that there is something missing, that there's something that needs to change. So let's all try and take more risks. Let's go back to the playground and feed our desires and our complex emotions and work harder to try and improve our situations and make our lives richer and full of joy.